And if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about government, then you're listening to the wrong show.
The Georgia Virtue presents the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast.
This is episode 227. This week we get back in the DeLorean to 1955. We have the Kandiss Taylor SWAT, Michigan shenanigans, Georgia bookies, to arms in Cobb County schools, Indiana picking the wrong hill on which to die, and the windfall under the porch. I'm Dave Roberts. With me is my part of this endeavor, writer, journalist, owner of the GeorgiaVirtue.com, and dog mom, Jessica Szilagyi.
Hi, Dave.
Hey, big congratulations to Stanley.
I know. He is a superstar in yet another forum.
Yeah, he won a radio contest. I guess both the dogs won the radio contest, but Stanley accepted the award.
He did. They invited him down to the Savannah, I-95, Rock of Savannah radio station to claim his gift card, and Stella doesn't like riding in the car, so he put on his bow tie and he went and was a total ham, of course, but posed for pictures and all that jazz.
Did he get on the radio?
They didn't ask him to get on the radio. I think he was a little disappointed, but they did have a couple treats for him, and that took his mind off of it pretty quickly.
Anybody could break in your house as long as they have peanut butter?
I would like to say yes, that's probably true, except that he and Stella are super aggressive about anyone. Well, he didn't used to be. He just picks up on what she does, but she doesn't like when anyone pulls in the driveway, stops at the stop sign, honks, rides a bike, nothing. So, and he's Team Stella, even though she's not Team Stanley. So
you brought this dog into my life.
Pretty much, yes. Pretty much. Yes.
Yeah, Allie had a big problem with anybody who had the audacity to walk past the house.
Yeah, it's totally disrespectful to who they are as dogs. How dare you?
Yeah, I'm like, those children are allowed to play in the cul-de-sac.
Right. Property lines, they're not big. They're not very good libertarians because they're big on, they think there are no property lines. Like everything is just theirs collectively.
Yeah, if I pee on it, it's mine.
Correct. So.
Which is R. Kelly's theory on life, too.
Oh, Dave. Dave.
So let's get back in the DeLorean, Doc Brown. We're going back to 1955.
Mm-hmm. I can't remember. Did we talk about this last week or the week before? Do you remember?
I can't remember. They run together.
Yeah, we did talk about the discovery of a warrant in the Emmett Till lynching from Mississippi back in 1955. And I guess last week on Thursday, the Associated Press published an article based on an unpublished memoir that they had obtained from Carolyn Bryant Dunham. And she is the one who the warrant was for, right?
Right. Yeah, she was the wife of one of the guys who was accused and acquitted. Right.
And her husband was Roy Bryant, and then Roy's half-brother, they were the ones that stood trial. And then, of course, they were acquitted and confessed at a later time. But she's 87. She was 21 when all of this happened. But the claims, of course, and I'm not going to rehash the story, but the claims were that, Emmett Till had made inappropriate advances towards her. So the manuscript that she gave to the Associated Press is called I Am More Than a Wolf Whistle. And I guess she's talked about it before in the past, but obviously it's not been released in its entirety. But it also had been placed in an archive at the University of North Carolina. And
with the agreement that it would not be released for several decades.
Right. And I'm assuming until she died. And then they also gave it to the FBI during that investigation, which, if you recall, brought about nothing. But it sheds a lot of light on her perspective, which I think is not going to appease. It's interesting, of course, but it's not going to appease the people who think that the warrant should still be executed. And it's not going to change the mind of the people who are like, well, the past is the past. All we can do is learn from it. Of course, people don't just take things at face value and say, well, that's an interesting perspective. I appreciate that we now know it. Like, people they're already out. They're outraged about it. And
I believe it was dictated to a writer in 2008, so 14 years ago. So her memory would have been a little more sharp than an 87-year-old, slightly more.
Well, sure. And I have a feeling that, she had made notes and things like, that's something that consumed her entire life because it's a famous case. There's foundations named after Emmett Till, But one of the quotes was, "I did not wish Emmett any harm and could not stop harm from coming to him since I didn't know what was planned for him. I tried to protect him by telling Roy that he's not the one, that's not him, please take him home." And, then the violent assaults started on Emmett Till, and he was 14. So, again, there's nothing that she can say that would make it any better. I think she's just trying to absolve herself.
Right.
I don't know.
Well,
it's very odd.
Yeah, it doesn't take much of a man to kill a 14-year-old. But yeah, it's interesting that the memoir comes out. Now, look, it was released to the FBI as part of the investigation, and that's appropriate. But the public release of that information was not supposed to happen until after her death. But I believe the person who did the actual writing, who put it together for her, is the one who released it, authorized its release from the archives.
Her daughter-in-law?
Was it her daughter-in-law?
Yeah. But also, one of the things that they said, and you talked about her memory being sharp at different times and stuff, but because you brought up it being dictated 14 years ago. And so the Associated Press pointed out that I guess there's contradictions between what she told the FBI and then what was in this book, allegedly 14 years ago or so. But what's interesting about that is that the FBI investigation was about 15 years ago. So they were at the same time. Now, I feel like, again, there's going to be people who want to find... I've done this in stories where you find like the smallest thing that is a contradiction, and because you wonder why or if it was genuine or sincere. Again, is it a horrible case? More information is not going to make it any better, and honestly, more action is not going to make it any better at this point.
And contradictions after that long, look. It's hard. Eyewitness testimony on anything is horrible if it happened 3 months ago and you get to trial. When you start talking about decades passing,
right?
Raising kids, having grandkids, talking about 60 years before this memoir even goes into the archives. From 1955. And I realized that the warrants and everything else was later, but the actual crime was 1955. That's
sure.
Even in if you were to try to put this together in 1985, to use the Back to the Future thing, that's still 30 years. That's I don't know how sharp. Well, I know your sharp memory's not that sharp 30 years ago because you were a toddler.
Right.
But even, my memory going back 30 years is not great. And, that's, I couldn't tell you half the people I went to high school with.
Well, the Justice Department has opened multiple investigations and they've all been closed, and they closed one this past December in 2021. And, then this warrant was found, and, the warrant, they wanted it to be executed. I'm not sure how you could execute it based on what's already been, or based on something that's been attested to or sworn by someone else if that person isn't still here. I mean, and then also at the same time, like, everything that they've investigated has not produced any additional information or any additional, I guess, validity that they feel like would allow them to prosecute any additional persons. So I'm sure they feel like they're up against the clock. I'm sure the family feels like, you know, all the rest of the people who are alive are up against the clock. Time is running out. They're all aging just like the rest of us. But
the justice is not, we're going to rehash. The justice is not served by dragging her back to Mississippi. I mean, she's 87 years old.
Her involvement is already, to the extent that there is any, it's already known. I don't know.
She was the excuse.
Right.
So I don't know. It's the, speaking of gifts that keep on giving, we have the Kandiss Taylor swatting incident.
Yeah, what was this? Monday?
Wednesday?
Oh, I don't know.
Was it Monday? Was it early? Gosh,
I don't know. Last week.
Talk about things running together, right?
For sure. So I think it was maybe Tuesday, actually. It basically, whatever morning it was, woke up and on Twitter, Kandiss Taylor had posted a video, a quite angry video. It happened Monday night, so we did find out on Tuesday. She posted a video at like 2:30 a.m. Saying, you know, that her family had just been subjected to this traumatic event, that it was a swatting incident. Someone had called the police or called 911, and she was in the shower when her son came in hysterical. They'd been woken up from their slumber to hear all this commotion outside, and there were police with rifles and other weapons surrounding her home because somebody had called with a voice to text, or text to voice, I'm not sure. One of those artificial intelligence voice converters where it makes your voice sound differently. And someone had reportedly reported that Candace had shot her husband and was going to shoot herself. Like the call was imitating her, is what she was told by dispatch. And I don't know how she said she recorded the whole thing. I have not seen that it's been posted as of recording time, but you know,
I've seen the videos.
The videos that Candace posted?
No, the videos. Well, yeah, the security video.
Okay.
But I have not heard the 911 tape.
Me either. You know, I mean, if I think most people know what swatting is because it's become such a unusually popular thing in the last several years. But it's basically,
see, I didn't.
It's when you call 911 and it's a prank or it's used to harass people, whichever, but it's one or the other. It's both. Sometimes it's because you're mentally ill. I've seen all kinds of things, but they call 911. They assert that there's an active shooter an active shooter in progress, that someone has been shot, that someone's being held hostage, something that would not just yield one or two officers to come out, but would have heavily armed officers. And you know, I don't know the extent of I know some stuff about the Appling County Sheriff's Office and the resources they have around there, but it's certainly not like when this type of thing happens in Cobb County or Gwinnett County or the city of Brookhaven or something like that, where there's a large agency with lots of officers or deputies and a large arsenal. It's dangerous for police and for the public because, you know, there's been homeowners who have come out wondering what, you know, they can't see what's going on because a lot of times it's dark, and they shoot and they hurt officers or they fight back or whatever the case may be. And then there's been times when they don't know what's going on and they don't necessarily comply with orders because they don't know what's going on, and they're shot and or killed by law enforcement. And it's all because of a third party that had made this fake call.
Well, this comes from gamers, apparently.
That's where it started, yeah.
Yeah, apparently, if you're playing Call of Duty and and you get into a verbal argument. See, when I grew up, when I was a kid, if you had a problem with somebody, you got in a fight with them.
Yeah, you punched them.
Yeah. Well, gamers aren't exactly punching types for the most part. So they thought it'd be fun to have somebody playing a video game and have SWAT bust down their door.
Which is not funny at all. Like, there's all these articles on the internet about when you're a gamer, how to protect your identity and so that your address cannot be found and this, that, and the other. I mean, it's pretty messed up.
Yeah, but when you're a political candidate, that's out the window.
Right, but what I'm saying is that where it started and the fact that like it's that much of a problem in the gaming community that there's all kinds of, it's not just like one column on, on this thing. It's a widespread, multi-state, across the country issue where they tell you to keep your identity private because it keeps happening, regardless of the fact that states have made it illegal to do this.
But it's usually interstate. A lot of times with gamers, it's interstate.
Right.
You get a gamer in California.
Candace, we don't.
Sure.
We don't know. So,
sure.
So luckily, thankfully, I don't really care what your opinions are. If you think that it's funny that this happened to her or that, she deserved it or something. She doesn't. Nobody does. It could have been one of her children. It could have been her 14-year-old, her 16-year-old, her however young her other kids are. Her husband, they didn't do anything. They don't, nobody deserves this. And it would be terrifying. And she wasn't angry at her sheriff's office. She said they thought they were protecting me because they had a female voice calling saying that they'd shot their husband 5 times and they were going to shoot themselves. And so they came with weapons and this, that, and the other. It's horrible. And I'm thankful that nobody got hurt. But true to Kandiss Taylor, the brand that is Kandiss Taylor, she gets on Twitter and her next comment after this video posting is that she wants the person responsible charged with attempted murder.
Yes, attempted murder. Now, look, there are a lot of laws that were broken. Attempted murder is not one of them. Now, look, I watched the video. There were, I think, 4 police officers on her lawn. Now, there was a heck of a response down the road because they had ambulances and first responders and everybody down the road ready because they thought there were victims ready to respond. But there were 4. It was not SWAT. I don't think they even have SWAT down there.
Well, most sheriff's offices don't have like a SWAT team that's always on call, but they have a team of people who activate and are part of this team that are on call at different times when as part of their regular duties, like they're trained and stuff. They don't have the manpower to have a dedicated SWAT team. Or the equipment or, an MRAP or anything like that, which I don't really want rolling down the street either. But it was a pretty... She got on the phone with 911. She did the right... Well, first thing she called a buddy, an investigator at the sheriff's office who told her correctly... Call dispatch. Call 911. Right. Yeah. Hear that, Trey Kelly? You called 911, not your buddy. So 911 tells her what's happening. She says that's absolutely not what happened. They open the door, police clear the scene, and that's it. It wasn't. Thankfully, it was not a kick the door down and shoot the dog and throw the kids' faces in the carpet or anything like that. It was handled as well as can be done in that situation. I will say too, though, hold on. The reason it was handled well is because, she's talking about this being where I grew up in my hometown and this all happened. She's absolutely right. However, those things all happened. She was given that courtesy because they did know her. And I think, I don't think they think in the moment, oh, can we verify if this is a prank or not? I don't think I hope law enforcement doesn't do that because, just like stopping for hand sanitizer to check your phone background like we've seen on the internet in the last couple days, that time is everything. But she was, I think, no matter how bad the situation that they thought they were going into was, they gave her an additional courtesy because they know her. No, that's quite possible. They also, if someone's suicidal and they say, I've shot my husband, you typically don't just kick the door down with somebody who's suicidal. You attempt to make contact with them.
especially when you know that there might be kids in the house. And she'd already made contact with dispatch and said, this is who I am, but why are you outside my house? Mm-hmm. And luckily they don't have she didn't live in Cobb County, where maybe the first response would have been to take a battering ram to the front door and bust it down while everybody's asleep and do a quiet approach and start throwing flashbangs.
Yeah. Not because for any like publication reasons or, gossipy reasons. I'm genuinely interested to know how it unfolded in terms of like the timeline. Like obviously she called, and time is of the essence. I mean, you would be scrambling and, to act and not because if you're scared to open the door or you're scared to go outside. But I would like to know like how much information she gave the dispatcher and obviously she could put her husband on the phone to say, no, I didn't shoot my husband. He's right here. He's talking. He's fine. He's just as scared as I am. But like, how long did all this go on before the dispatcher told her, because it was the dispatcher, not the people outside. But before they told her, look, we got a call and they said it was you. I mean, because that's not usually something you're just told over the 911 call,
Right.
So. Right.
Yeah. As this becomes more and more, I hate to say popular, prevalent across the United States, departments are going to have to start thinking twice.
That's scary.
Especially, well, it also depends on the phone call you get. When you get a recorded voice that calls something in, or a text to speech and something like that, and the details are sketchy and the caller ID is sketchy, that may slow the response a little bit. Versus having someone on the phone live now saying, I'm outside this building and I'm hearing gunshots. So I don't know. It's illegal. You can prosecute whoever you want. Most of the people, I would think this is mostly young people that do this kind of stuff. I'm no Kandiss Taylor fan, mm-hmm. but you can disagree with people in the political arena and not go after their families, and not go after them at dinner and yell and shout them down and everything else. Just like they're doing to the Supreme Court in D.C., where, Kavanaugh can't even go out for a meal. Yeah. They've got restaurant owners have a quote unquote hit on them, where if you see Kavanaugh sit down in your restaurant, you make a phone call or you send a text, and this group will come out and shout him down.
It's absurd.
This sort of stuff. Kandiss Taylor's no longer a threat. She's under investigation with the ethics board. For not filing her stuff, and the ethics board will do its thing. She's not a threat to anybody. She's just loud and obnoxious.
Well, and there's lots of people who share their opinions, and you don't have to listen. You didn't have to listen before. I don't understand the concept of. Do you draw attention to yourself when you say the things that you do? Absolutely. I draw attention to myself by the things that I say, and I own that. But nobody is deserving of being a target of something like this. And what they have done, which is going to be an unintended consequence, is make her a victim of something and give her a platform to discuss this. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a bill in the legislature or something to come about, because she's going to raise Cain about this, and her supporters are going to push for something like this to have more severe consequences as well. Maybe not attempted murder, but something to the extent to hold people accountable when they can be held accountable. So not just that, it's a huge waste. Think about all the resources that were parked outside her house: the ambulance, the fire truck, all the other first responders, every one of the officers or the deputies on duty at 2:00 in the morning or midnight, whatever had happened. I know her thing went up at 2 or 2:30, but I think the incident was pretty well over by then, obviously. But there are a lot of weird things with this but they took 100% of the deputies off the road for Appleton County.
So you got to respond to this.
Right. But my point is, if you hate somebody, the worst thing you can do is make them a victim.
True. Yeah, you make her a martyr. And people who've never heard of Kandiss Taylor are now looking her up. Maybe this should have happened back in January. She would have pulled more than 3%. But that's, yeah, you absolutely make a victim out of her. You give her content. You give her supporters more fuel to go out there and say, yeah, she's doing the right thing and the establishment's out to get her and all that stuff. So anyway, as usual, I failed to live up to the name of the show. I failed to tell you how you were wrong.
Well, it's not about telling me how I'm wrong. I mean, you're telling people who did this that it's wrong and that support this practice because, I mean, there's zero benefit to anyone for doing this. But
right. Yeah, exactly. So we have a lawsuit to bar GOP Michigan gubernatorial candidate from the ballot over January 6 charges. This is a interesting one. This is off the Hill. So some of the verbiage in the article tends to lean, wrong.
Yeah, but it's an interesting concept because I mean we talked about the challenges to Marjorie Taylor Greene's candidacy on the show, and this is for Ryan Kelly, who's running for he's obviously a Republican, and he's running for office. They want to prevent him from appearing on the ballot because he was charged in connection with the January 6th stuff. I mean, I don't agree with anyone being disqualified for charges. Right.
He's charged. Now, if the voters decide that they don't want to take a chance of him being impeached because he's found guilty. Look, they call it in the article insurrection, which pisses me off. It was not an insurrection. It was not an attempted coup d'etat. It just wasn't. He's charged with like unlawful entry, even though he never entered the building.
His charges are misdemeanors, to be clear.
Right. So the lawsuit says it's clear he is a clear and present danger to democracy in Michigan. Suit asked Michigan Secretary of State Joycelyn Benson and the Board of State Canvassers to declare Kelly ineligible for both the August Republican primary, which he's the front runner, and the November general election based on charges filed against him.
So here's my first thought that comes to mind when I see this lawsuit. You know, if you, regardless of what you think about January 6th, both sides of the aisle are guilty of when they see people doing things, whether it's protesting in the streets with fire or climbing a wall at the Capitol or whatever the case may be. The argument is always, in America, we don't do that. We decide at the ballot box. We make changes at the ballot boxes. And while that is true in present day, that's actually not how America was started. So, I mean, that makes you sound a little bit dumb. But if you do believe, if that is your position, that, you know, going forward from 1776, we do everything in the ballot box with decorum and dignity. This guy was angry and was a participant because he helped, apparently one of the charges against him is that he helped another person pull back a metal barricade. Again, that's an allegation, but they said it's on video. I don't know, but he's taking it to the ballot box. So he's doing what you want him, you think he should have done in the first place, and he's not yet been convicted of a crime. So it's twofold here. One, you're totally ignoring his presumption of innocence, which we are supposed to cherish in America. And two, he's doing what everyone says is the proper pathway to have reforms. It's just he is accused of doing something that you don't like, and so you don't want him to have the opportunity to do it the way you said he should have done it if he held the views he holds.
Right. And look, again, these are misdemeanor charges. I didn't even think the FBI got involved in misdemeanor charges. I guess you have to if it's in D.C.
Well, I think part of it too
you have
is
Capitol Police.
Yeah, but I think part of it too is just that it's an offshoot of all of the other investigation that they're doing, and it would be confusing if they like passed one off to the solicitor state court. That wouldn't really it's easier to keep everything
right, everything together.
Mm-hmm.
This is Kelly. Their claims of insurrection are laughable. It is an attempt to deflect from the actual crimes and hardships that have been caused by the Whitmer crime family, he wrote, referring to Democratic Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who we've all gotten to know in the last 2 years.
Right. And
he pleaded not guilty, naturally.
Yes, because like you said, his argument is that he didn't enter the Capitol. His actual charges are entering or remaining in a restricted building or grounds without lawful authority, disorderly and disruptive conduct, knowingly engaging in an act of physical violence against a person or property, and willfully injuring property. So 4 counts. I don't know.
Yeah.
He has a point about entering. I mean, if he didn't enter, and how can they claim what happened on the outside was not lawful because they were telling them to not come inside? I mean, that's a tough sell. And then on the part about engaging in an act of physical violence against a person or property and then willfully injuring property, if he is allegedly seen removing a metal barrier, that's the language that the left-leaning Hill used. I'm not sure that that's damage.
Yeah, a temporary barricade and moving it is not an act of violence. It's also, now, if he got on the other side of the barrier, when it says unlawful entry to building or grounds, if he got beyond the barricade or says stay back, I guess that if he did tear the barrier down and get on the other side of it. But unless he took bolt cutters to the barrier or I don't know how he damaged the property. And notice they didn't get him for damage to government property. He didn't damage anything. Because that charge would have been there too.
They said willfully injuring property.
Injuring property. I don't know how you injure property. But that's I'm sure that's just how the law is written.
But again, I don't care if it's DUI, rape, murder. If you've only been... Here's the thing. Like, when you're talking about charges, I mean, at what point do you prohibit someone from appearing on the ballot? Because, I mean, if someone qualifies for office and then is charged with murder and it's a total scam or a setup, or they're charged with rape or to damage their candidacy, and you take them off the ballot, you've just not only eliminated and revoked their presumption of innocence, but you've
stifled the political process.
Yeah, and
now look, if he wins the primary, Whitmer is totally within her privilege, and honestly, if she's going to run, her obligation to run commercials showing the quote unquote insurrection, to show the protest on January 6th, and run those commercials ad nauseum. The problem that Whitmer knows she has is the people of Michigan are so fed up with her and her policies and her administration that Satan himself, if he ran against her, would win. She is so unpopular right now in Michigan. And not just among conservatives. People are fed up with Whitmer. And I think she's the one that said you can't get into a power boat on a Michigan lake, but you can get into a sailboat during COVID, because somehow a power boat would spread COVID, but a sailboat does not.
I just wanted to interject that I looked at the indictment, and Ryan Kelly's injury to property is different than the barricade. The injury to property is that he damaged a part of a tarp that was covering some scaffolding on the outside of the U.S. Capitol building, which technically would belong to a contractor, but I'm not a lawyer, so.
He damaged a tarp.
Correct. That was on scaffolding on the Capitol.
Anywhere else in the world, it would be or anywhere else in the country, go buy another tarp. Go to Home Depot, spend $50 and get him a new blue tarp.
I mean, we're totally conflating whether he should appear on the ballot with the charges that he's being,
right? Yeah,
and I mean, I get that, but it's just so like, because it wouldn't matter. Like I said, if he was charged with something more egregious, or if he was charged with fraud, or it would be up to the public to decide. And if the public decided and then they were convicted, then, either there's laws in place to remove them or to not. And the public has to live with all of those decisions, because this is not the first time something like this has happened. It's just the first time it involved Donald Trump and the U.S. Capitol, and whether or not people believe an election was legitimate, and it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're going to beat this horse, this poor dead horse. And I think it's losing gas, because people just don't care at this point. People are looking towards November, and people just don't care what happened on January 6th. They just don't. The people who do are already dyed-in-the-wool leftists who are already in that camp. So they're just sitting in an echo chamber, yelling about this stuff to each other. The rest of the United States doesn't care. They've moved on. Most people have accepted it was not an attempted coup. We know this. Most people accepted it wasn't an insurrection, but they keep drudging this stuff up. And this idea that you being charged with something keeps you. You're right. It would totally empower every DA around the country to manipulate the political process. If you've got somebody running for state rep, the DA decides they don't like them, is just charge them with something. So, you're charged with a misdemeanor. You have to take you off the ballot, wait till the primary is over, and drop the charges.
Right.
This is a good time to remind you that these are our opinions and not those of anyone not on the show or any respective company for which we may work, own, or otherwise associate ourselves with on a regular or irregular basis. Also, you can find other episodes and relevant stories over at thegeorgiavirtue.com. It's time to roll the bones. Report says that Georgia should legalize sports betting.
Of course, we've talked about this several times because legislation comes up during the legislative session year after year. Good old Ron Stevens and Senator Brandon Beach and same old players who desperately want gambling, casinos, sports betting, horse racing, yada, yada, yada. And just off the bat, want to remind everybody that I don't think it should be legalized, and I don't think it should be illegal. I think it should be decriminalized and not regulated. And the only reason that our government is in favor of legalizing it and regulating it is so they can have some of it. And when they have some of it, it's worse than if it was illegal or legal. So that's my position. But back to the topic. Should Georgia legalize it?
Well, here's the thing. When you talk about sports betting, the majority of sports betting is done online. And we're talking about betting on games. And the way these casinos make money is they don't take a cut. It's called handicapping. So there are algorithms, and going back to the old days, used to be old guys with pencil and paper that would handicap these games. And the spreads, when you talk about spread, is how many points you think a team is going to win by. Are usually not based on who they think is going to win or how many points. It's based on what bets are going where. So they hedge their bets so that no matter what happens, usually the house comes out on top. Now, individual player may win, may lose, But overall, when you're taking, hundreds of thousands of bets worldwide or millions of bets worldwide, is when you hedge them properly, you're still making a little money on it. Government doesn't do that. Government gets in and they say they want a cut of all the action, which increases the expense to the bookie, which means those payouts get a little worse, which means that using an illegal bookie is more fair than if government gets involved.
Well, you bring that up, and there's several comparisons online about states that have it, states that allow online sports betting versus retail sports betting. And in Montana, they allow both, but they set limits. They set a $250 limit on retail and $1,000 online. So just like what you said, I mean, if you want higher gambles, or there's totally an incentive to go outside of the legitimate process.
Right. And who's to say that $250 for a lot of people is a lot of money, and they shouldn't bet more than that in a week or on a single game or whatever. They should know their limits, and that's on them. That's on their addiction. But you also have people like Michael Jordan who can drop $1 million on a game. Yeah,
it's not a ton for the dang guy with an addiction to gambling either. I mean, they're not really thinking about, they're thinking about what they're going to do, not the next cap.
Yeah, I was in a riverboat in Missouri, in St. Louis, right across the street from the Budweiser plant. And I sat down at a table and I bought in. The waitress came over and brought me a beer. And because I was in St. Louis, ordered a Budweiser, and I threw a chip on her tray. It's like, you can't pay with chips, and that's $7. So what do you mean $7? I'm sitting here because I don't pay to drink when I'm gambling. That's part of it. It's like, no, you can't pay with chips because the state makes us monitor how much you're winning and losing and report to the state. So I paid for my beer, drank my beer, and we left. Because I'm not playing that game. I'm not playing that way. But yeah, they had a stop loss, and I can't remember what it was. This was years ago. This is long before Connie and I were married. Years and years ago, I had a friend that lived in St. Louis, flew up there, and we went to the riverboat. But that's how they get these things through and approved. Is we're not going to give away free alcohol because they think that somehow alcohol feeds the gambling addiction. We're going to put a stop loss in. And if you go with sports betting, if you go to a bookie, as long as you can pay the bookie, he doesn't care. Mm-hmm. And bookies are going off of the Vegas lines, and they're paying based on the Vegas lines, and they make their money off of the margins. So some weeks they win, most weeks they win. The house always wins overall. But that's, if you make the bets over football season, you make the bets over the weekend. Saturday for college, Sunday, and then Monday night. Tuesday morning, bills due either way. If you're a winner, the bookie pays you. If you're a loser, you pay the bookie. And a lot of that was going through PayPal and other things like that. Now it's going back to cash because the electronic stuff is being monitored because the government wants their fingers in it.
Yeah.
In Alabama, you can't even play fantasy football for money. I was trying to do a fantasy football draft for my parents' house, and they live in Lower Alabama, and I had to VPN and get back to Georgia to be able to do my draft because Alabama doesn't allow playing fantasy football for money.
I mean, I don't understand it. I don't understand why someone would want to spend their money on that, but it's not my money to decide how it's spent. So, whatever. I don't get, especially in the age of the internet. I'm not advocating for something like federal intervention here, but the discrepancies across all these states has got to be confusing.
Oh, it is.
And it's constantly changing. And then there's states where it's legal, but the state's stuff it's not live in that state. It's a mess.
Online casinos are a bad idea anyway, for the player, because you have no control. If you're sitting at a poker table and you see cards going, there's only so much you can do with cards. With a computer, you have no idea. But you know who is running a completely legal online casino in Georgia? The damn lottery. Mm-hmm. They've got now lottery games. You don't have to leave the house to go buy a lottery ticket anymore. You can do it all online.
Was that pre-pandemic or did that happen because of the pandemic?
I don't know. I didn't know about a lot of it until I was sitting there watching the Braves game, and some stupid commercial comes on for like an app, like those, like I thought it was like Candy Crush or whatever. No, it's a damn lottery. Mm-hmm. And playing this game, playing that game, and play responsibly. And like, what? So we get this straight. I can't bet on the outcome of the Braves game tonight legally in Georgia, but I can sign on to the lottery and play some bubble burst game for money. The state hates competition.
Well, and that's what it is. I mean, they're not shy about it. When these lawmakers, regardless of what gambling thing they're up there for, they get up there and they say, we want a piece of the pie, and we need to. It's going untouched. It's going under the radar, and we're losing out on this money as if they have some sort of right to the money or entitlement to the money. And then, of course, you have usually their faith organizations and then mental health organizations and things like that come in and say, you have to set something up here to help with, gambling addictions and mental health provisions and this, that, and the other. And we always have at least one bill filed that includes those provisions. But I didn't realize how under enacted that type of thing is. Like, I thought that it was pretty prevalent because even here in Statesboro, like, we just got liquor stores, and the liquor store application has money that is allocated towards youth in empowerment and enhancement and all that nonsense that the government thinks it's capable of doing. But only 6% of the laws, and since all this was overturned in 2018 and states started enacting legislation allowing sports betting, only 6% of the bills include some sort of funding for gambling addictions or treatment or whatever, which I don't necessarily think is legit, but I thought that these groups had way more sway in determining that outcome, and it turns out they don't.
Well, if there are ever going to be serious bills that make it fit in at the end.
But 6%?
Yeah, we already have real gambling problems in Georgia, and it's not the people who can afford it. Go into a off-brand
gas station. Yeah,
not Parker's, not Quick Trip, not Racetrack, but you go to these places and they're casinos. They're paying out quote unquote gift cards, which I don't know if that's true or not. I have heard reports that if you're there at the right time, they'll pay out cash. But these people are, and obviously I'm going off of looks, but the person that pulls up in a smoking 87 Ford pickup truck, and I mean smoking out of the tailpipe, gets out and it's a noon on a work day and looks unemployed, is can go sit and feed dollar bills into a machine that when you go to a Vegas casino, those machines, those slots are, I don't say it's government, is regulated by the Gaming Commission, and they have to pay out a certain amount of time. And the idea in Vegas or Biloxi or Atlantic City or Black Hawk, Colorado, or, a dozen other places around the country is to have you lose slowly. It's not to just take your money. But these machines can be as tight or as loose as you want to set them. They're computers. There's nothing random in a computer. So the computer knows exactly how often it's going to pay out. So when you go into these gas stations and these people with gambling addictions go into these gas stations, you're always set up to lose when you gamble. But they're really set up for failure.
They are, but I mean, it's still a choice.
Oh, absolutely, it's a choice. It absolutely is a choice. I fail to see how not having, and look, your average, that type of person is not getting into sports betting. They may go to a racetrack, something like that, which we don't have in Georgia. And I don't, for animal cruelty reasons, I don't want dog tracks or horse racing and stuff like that, because those lower end tracks are very cruel to the animals, which again, it's not a government issue. It's just, I wouldn't support them. But this is not a government problem. Those people aren't the ones that are betting on games. The people that are betting on games are usually my age or a little older. They're betting. Most of them are betting within their means, because with a bookie you have to. I mean, you get frozen out pretty quickly. And online you can't borrow money. You put your money in online and you make your bets and all that stuff. And I'm not a big sports bet person. I do play fantasy football for money, but. I've played poker in underground clubs and that were illegal until they started getting robbed many years ago. But this is yes, it's time to deregulate. I think is where you're going with it, is deregulate it and let people who want to go online and place bets on games go do it.
Well, and it goes back to the whole thing about rules for thee and not for me and everything. And it's so infuriating because, the state loves to talk about how we can't make victims out of people in so many ways where there actually isn't a victim. And the state claims to be the victim in every criminal case. They'll talk about a victim, but it's never victim versus whomever. It's the state versus whomever. But the state has zero issues instituting something like this where they will say that it creates victims, and whether or not you believe gambling is a choice or that, you're preying on the poor, however, it doesn't matter. The state will concede that there are negative impacts of it and still want to institute it and be a party to it that receives a tangible, lucrative, multi-billion-dollar reward for being a part of it. They have no problem doing that. And if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about government, then you're listening to the wrong show.
Yeah, just wait till the lottery figures out how to do sports betting. Yeah. And then you'll never see it legal. It'll only be through the lottery. So only if time. Cobb County's plan to let some non-officers carry guns in schools in the wake of Uvalde tragedy, but not the teachers.
Yeah, this happened Thursday night at the school board meeting. They voted 4-2. And it was very contentious. It was a packed boardroom. Angry parents don't want non-peace certified people. They were yelling, "Delay the vote, shame." They were wearing T-shirts, holding signs. It was very, very, very contentious. Cobb is one of the biggest school districts. I guess it's the second biggest school district in the state. They have 114 schools, and they have 67 school resource officers. So obviously they're not everywhere. And when I think about that, it's crazy to me because I think about schools down here that have one resource officer for the entire district. And it's hard to fathom 67 officers. But the whole premise of doing this, which the school superintendent said was, if we had enough money to hire an officer for every district or every school, we would. We don't have that money, and we don't have the people who want to do the job, especially when, they can work other places and make more money. And law enforcement in general is having a hard time recruiting. So
yeah, the superintendent, Chris Ragsdale, said even if you gave him a open checkbook, he couldn't fill the positions.
Right.
Nobody wants to be a cop. And I wonder why.
The policy that they're going to institute is that the people who will, be allowed to carry these guns will be certified, or not certified, but trained in the almost the same manner that a school resource officer would, and that there would be a psychological evaluation, which is going to rule out a lot of people, which I'm not saying it shouldn't, but there's going to be people who would be qualified but are like, screw you, I'm not getting a psychological evaluation to work security at a school. And then, of course, they could hire someone and then that person could say, well, I refuse to carry a gun. And then the school district has to say, okay, because they cannot be penalized for refusing to carry a gun. So it's a very interesting situation. Of course, all that's because of the law that we passed, 5 years ago? I don't remember. Saying that employees and teachers could carry if the school district authorized them to. Cobb says, no teachers, we will hire some other people and authorize them to. And then if they want to, they can. And if I don't really understand that part. Like, you can't penalize someone for refusing to carry a gun, but the whole point is to have people who will carry a gun because the school doesn't have enough people who carry a gun. No teachers, hiring someone new, but you don't know if this person will, and you can't penalize them if they won't.
Man, this is what happens when people who have best intentions write legislation without being clear. The idea was you can't penalize a teacher,
right? Or
if you have an existing teacher and say, hey, we want you to carry a gun, and you say no, they can't penalize that teacher in any way. And I guarantee you that was something that was pushed in by the teachers unions. And look, I agree with that. If you're an existing teacher, if you're teaching lit or something like that, and you're not a gun person, like, no, I'm not carrying a gun. But let me tell you something. Every ROTC instructor should be fully capable of going through the training and put a firearm. And look, these firearms have to be concealed or locked in a safe. It's not like it's going to sit in the desk next to the apple. It's it's not that a kindergartner can go over and grab Mrs. Krabappel's pistol. It's going to be on the person or locked in a safe. And I pick out ROTC instructors because all these guys are typically retired military, and presumably already have a working knowledge of firearms. And with a train up, if they volunteer, why? How many football coaches do you know that not only would beat the snot out of somebody, but are kind of the guys that you would want to have a gun under their shirt?
So Alicia Thomas Searcy, who is the Democratic nominee for state school superintendent, she went to the meeting. I don't know where she lives, but she was at the meeting because obviously this was contentious. And she spoke during the public comment section of the meeting, and she said, quote, "As a parent, the last thing I want to think about is more guns at my daughter's school or any other type school. I certainly agree that there's a need for more caring adults in our school, but not ones who carry guns and aren't police officers." So the mother who carries a gun everywhere else she goes and is carrying and isn't a police officer, there's no need for her in school? That's interesting. Right. That's a really interesting position to take.
I have to disarm. Went to a school play Saturday. It was a school camp for my nephew, and like, is this out of school? And I was like, yeah. Like, damn it, have to take the pistol off and all that stuff because I carry every day, everywhere legal. But yeah, I have to disarm before going to school. Now it would take one person with a firearm because none of us are armed. So the argument for and against trained individuals with firearms is stupid. They're trained. They're going to be trained. You cannot get everybody post certified. You can't do it. It's just not going to happen. And I didn't know that Cobb County was less than 50% with resource officers. Because even at 100%, you're not 100%. Because you have people with time off. You have sick days. You have every other problem that you have with employee staffing. That resource officer is not necessarily going to be there 5 days a week. So you'd like to have 10% over the minimum number of schools, so that if you have an officer who is out on COVID time, you could take somebody and move them over to that school, out of the pool, or additional road deputies that are trained as SROs, that you can put into place and fill their spot for them. But anyway, we're running long. Jessica, your closing thought?
It's kind of hard to squeeze in, but I will do what I can. So obviously, I'm sure that by now most people have heard about the story about a 10-year-old rape victim who had to cross state lines from Ohio to Indiana to get an abortion because she was raped and the law would not allow it. And there's been all this blowback about like Jim Jordan and other elected officials saying, if that story is true, if it's true, if it's true, it's terrible. But, and it's one of those stories where obviously, and it has come out in the past couple days, since it was initially broken, it has come out that there's been like DNA testing done on whatever happened at the clinic, and they're doing testing, and that they're waiting to confirm that, whoever she accused or said did this to her, that they match and all this. But a 10-year-old, like it's the wrong hill to die on. I don't really care what your position is on abortion. A 10-year-old, whether they were raped or whether there was some messed up, twisted, consensual thing that they want to allege, or however, no matter what the facts and circumstances are, we're talking about a 10-year-old child. And the Indiana Attorney General is talking about criminal prosecution for the doctor and looking at has issued subpoenas and all kinds of things about going after the doctor who performed the abortion. And I don't know why. Like, I don't think this is the type of story. I don't care who you are, what you believe, what your values are. It's not the kind of story that you're going to win any hearts and minds. You can't undo it. And so even if you think it's a political slam dunk, I'm here to tell you it's not. Like, a child victim like this is not. And it's also not that someone who's of an age who could go and make this decision without parents. Like, her parents did what they thought was best for their child. And the Attorney General has no idea what that is, what is best for that child.
Number one, the health of the child. She's 10. She's
correct.
She's 10. Carrying a child to term may kill her. She's 10. I would guess that the time lapsed because, one, a lot of times the victims, especially molestation victims, don't pop right up and go running for help because they're scared. Two, the thought would never occur to anybody that a 10-year-old would get pregnant.
No, and there's people in Ohio who have said, well, we allow an exception for endangerment of the mother. Well, I'm sure that in a crisis, a mother of a 10-year-old isn't quite thinking like, let me go look up the laws. They just made decisions were made, and there were medical decisions. And
well, and an adult rape victim knows to go get the morning after pill, the plan B. Go get RU-486, whatever they're calling that now. There's you're talking about a 10-year-old who was raped and molested and raped. And it's we can't hash the entire story, but
on the heels,
you're right. This is not the hill to die on.
No, on the heels of questioning whether it actually happened, which I understand in this day and age, you have to wonder, because we all hear things. Sometimes you don't say those things out loud. You don't get on Twitter and say, if this happened, or question something that is so egregious. You might just want to wait a little. And then if you find out, like it did come out that, we have evidence that at least that a 10-year-old was in fact pregnant. And yes, this act did occur. She had to get pregnant somehow. Her name's not Mary. I don't know. I don't understand it. Republicans are going to lose it 8 days out of the week.
You cannot. You you're feeding the hyperbole that's been coming out of the left since the ruling on Roe v. Wade.
And you're making people hate you for just being terrible humans because...
Yeah, but you're feeding the hyperbole. Everything we said, no, this is not going to apply to rape victims. This is not going to apply to a little girl that's raped. This is not going to apply to incest. And then the first thing you do is get on the news and apply it to rape and possible incest of a child. So everything that the left's been screaming is going to happen, you're wrapping up into one little case. Perfect. Brilliant. Thanks. Because that's not helping the pro-life side at all. So anyway, my closing thoughts a little nicer and a little scarier. New Jersey man finds $2,000 in 1934 dated cash under his porch doing renovation. He found a box, thought it was trash, about to throw it out, and it was bundles of 10s and 20s, all from the early 30s. He said it's either a bank robber or somebody who didn't trust banks. Well, in 1934,
why would you?
I can understand. My great aunt used to keep money everywhere in her house. Like she would pull the switch plates off the walls on the light switches and put money behind those and put it up because she lived through the Depression. She saw people lose everything in their banks.
Yeah.
So if you can think of 1934 rural New Jersey, and you saw a bank go under, yeah, you bury it under the porch. So this was probably somebody's life savings. Adjusted for inflation, it is something like $47,000 worth of today's money.
Well, and just to end the show on a high note, the nice thing is now, thanks to the Federal Reserve, you don't even have to have the money. It doesn't matter if you have the money in your hands. They can just say it's not worth anything.
Exactly. Poof, it's gone. Thanks, Jessica. So on that cheery note, big thanks to my partner in this endeavor, Jessica Szilagyi, to Eric Cumby, our editor that takes the absolute awful audio I send him and turns it into something that's possible to listen to. I'm Dave Roberts. Have a great week.
Catch me howling at the moon.